Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Forum for a Better Understanding. The issue of faith and mental health has been a topic that we have covered on this program several times in the past. But thanks to Mental Health America of the Central Valley, we have assembled for the next 2 weeks panels that will be discovering this and uncovering this for us in a new light. It is an issue that is very important in our churches, in our temples, our synagogues, and our homes of worship. And it's something that this diocese wants to share with you as we begin this new series of forum programs. We have some guests who are coming to you who have been on before and some other who are brand new. To my left is Natalie Chamberlain, the Reverend Disciples of Christ pastor of United Christian Church here in Fresno, and is here today also as the chair of the Interfaith Mental Health Alliance, a newly formed group here in town. Across from me is Dr. Brent Lindquist, a licensed psychologist practicing for the last 30 years and president of Link Care Center here in Fresno, a Christian counseling center serving clergy and the community members of the Valley. And directly across from me is our third panelist, Mary Schilling, who holds an MA in counseling psychology. As a member of the Jewish community, she is very committed to this issue and specializes professionally in foster care. I wonder if the three of you could help me understand as we begin the program, personally and professionally, why this issue of mental illness, reconciling theology and science, is very important to you as individuals. Natalie.
Being the pastor of a local congregation, it's almost an obvious answer. My congregation needs to find some way of understanding the things that they deal with in light of the faith that they hold. And so my place as pastor, especially in a neighborhood church, means that almost on a daily basis, I'm helping people to struggle with those issues. And so it's very, very important to me.
Thank you for being here. Brent.
Being a Christian who practices as a psychologist, I really try and integrate my faith into my practice. And as such, I find myself regularly reaching out to people who are experiencing difficulties in living or hurt and pain, whether it be mental dysfunction or illness. And it's just a core value that I've been working in 30 years in our ministry with.
Thank you for doing all you do at Link Care Center. Mary.
Well, for me, I've always had a tremendous interest in human dynamics, how people function. And when I entered the field of social work and counseling, I realized that healing is holistic. And I found that my faith was quite instrumental in me maintaining myself as a professional and helping other people as well.
Thank you for doing that and for coming all the way from Merced to be with us today. You know, in the first book of Samuel, chapter 16, we read, "The Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him." It goes on to tell us that David was a skillful harpist, well known to the people there, and Saul's servants sent for him to come to the court so he could console the king in his mental anguish. The passage then concludes, "And whenever the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it with his hand. And Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him." Now we know this is dated already 3,000 years ago, this story, but I'm wondering from the points of view of religion today, Judaism, evangelical faith, Protestant faith, what religion has to say about mental illness. Do clergy use different words than mental health providers? And does the language that they use obscure, or rather enlighten, the very human experience of mental illness? Could you begin a little bit, Mary, with one insight from Judaism on this?
Well, the words here, evil spirit, does not translate as demonic. the Hebrew word for it is ruha, and that means spirit in the sense of energy, in the sense of breath and wind, and has no association whatsoever of a demonic possession or whatever. So that clarifies it. So he obviously was experiencing agitation, anxiety, something like that, but it was a feeling and not something that that would make one believe that he was possessed with something. So that clarifies a lot, because I have heard this in other venues that God sends evil spirits, and within Judaism that is not what we believe, that God sends that. He was just agitated.
And picking up from that, Brent or Natalie, where would evangelical faith, Christian faith, help us see the further connection of religion with this issue?
Go ahead.
Well, I think about all the times during the ministry of Jesus Christ on earth when he related to people, and he tended not to distinguish in his care and love for them whether they had a demonic influence or they had a physical symptom. The woman that had an issue, he turned and he healed her. The prostitute, he said, who it is among you has the, is without sin, cast the first stone. And then he told her to go and sin no more. I mean, he had a very holistic approach to the conditions of us as humans. And it was first of all based on compassion and deep love and commitment. And so, I don't know that we have different words per se, but the driving force amongst that is all similar.
Thank you. Natalie.
I do know that there are times when different people reading the same passage of Scripture find different ways of interpreting those words. And I've got in my congregation a young woman who was kicked out of a congregation because the exorcism to relieve her of the demon that possessed her didn't work, and so it was her fault, and so she was sent away. And I think that Brent's bringing up that compassion, no matter how you believe or how you interpret those words, every person is someone who is precious to God, and every person needs to be treated with compassion no matter what we believe about how the interpretation of that word spirit or evil or anything else goes. People deserve compassion.
Briefly, is there then, would you see, some common ground between what Scripture and theology and even belief systems and what we observe scientifically, clinically, that there is common ground on this? Would you all agree or not?
I think the compassion is, we do have that common ground, that there must be compassion. You think we agree on that?
I think I agree on compassion. I think sometimes we struggle to find ways of showing that compassion. And I think that especially with the mental health issues that we face, there's a lot of fear in that, and compassion is hard in the midst of fear.
I think also within an evangelical tradition, that, I can't quote a lot of studies here, and this wouldn't be a good place, but there's an awful lot of basic scientific research that talks about people being connected and the benefits of connection, the benefits of communication, the benefits of back and forth. I think the church brings in one of the things that probably within the evangelical church is the idea that we are committed to care, but there is also care within a context. There is care and there is accountability and things. It's not about complete freedom to do whatever you're doing. It's a calling to accountableness, a calling to holiness that I think enriches the person in their journey.
Absolutely, and one of the texts that came to mind as I was thinking about this subject comes from Galatians, the 6th chapter. It's the first 5 verses, but 2 of the verses within those 5 carry each other's burdens, and this is the way you fulfill the law of Christ. And then verse 5 says, for each one should carry his own load. It is a way of talking about the places, the balance between taking care of yourself and taking care of one another, and the opportunities we have of then taking care of the other. So it's a balance between
Sure.
the accountability to one another as well as helping one another.
Speaking of helping one another, the mutuality of it, what's very interesting is to see the way the community needs to outreach to help others. But I want to turn that around, as Natalie proposed. What benefits do you see to a welcoming community, that very gesture of compassion? Have you seen it, Mary, in things that you've done where it is the community that benefits from caring for its, let's say, challenged members?
Well, it comes to my mind Tikkun Olam, which Natalie, you and I spoke about
Yeah.
that several days ago, that within Judaism we are commanded to make efforts, mitzvot, to repair the world, to bring the world back to its original perfection. And so when we do that, we honor God, and we honor His creation, which is the world, it's everything, it's everyone. There's a quote from, I think it's Maimonides, and I hope someone will correct me if it's not true, that if we are to extend ourselves to another person, it is as if we have given birth to that person, which I think is a tremendous and very powerful statement that is made when we reach out to other people. We have a common connection.
On that note, I have to tell everyone, we have a very serious ritual in our program. We take a break. So don't go anywhere, because in 60 seconds we will be back to continue this conversation. I want to thank Mary Schilling for being here for the first half of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
KNXT thanks all its loyal viewers and respected businesses who have supported your Catholic television station. Now you can support KNXT with program underwriting by having your name, your company's name, or organization associated with your favorite program. Detailed information about you or your company will appear before and after each program or day part you select. Keep the quality and spiritual message alive and make a difference. Call 559-488-7440 today or go online at knxt.tv to find out more about program underwriting on KNXT.
Hello again, and welcome to the second part of a 2-week series on faith and mental health. We have a new guest joining us today, Reverend Kurt Rye, who is a former mental health worker, but currently assistant reverend at the Fresno Buddhist Temple. Kurt's been on before on a program, and we're really glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Now, Reverend Kurt, in your previous career as a mental health provider, you were trained to include, obviously, well, I'm wondering, were you trained to include faith and spiritual practice in your own efforts to work with supporting a person who needed your care?
Well, actually, I worked in nonprofit mental health, and there's a very strong rule about not bringing spirituality into the situation. So ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds were honored, but not spiritual backgrounds, which is one of the reasons why I decided to change paths.
So this is answering a very important question, but it still leaves the burden on the panel to wonder professionally what can be done to make sure that it isn't only one part of help that is dealing with the spiritual. That's probably uncovering an issue right there.
But if I may add, one of the other things is that understanding and working with clients is that their spiritual communities are very important to them. And so that would be one of the things that I would do in that capacity, is I would talk to them if they were attending their church or their synagogue, and also their relationship to God or Buddha or whomever, and use that as a tool to see how they're doing. And that was always very important.
Which is what we do in this country, is separate but deal with it. So you would say it did work. You were able to definitely appreciate the contributions of a person's support outside of your personal efforts.
Yeah, and if the client let me, I would speak to the pastor, and they would say, I'm concerned about him. And I'd have a relationship with the pastor and try to work through the situation.
Brent, now you participated recently in a mental health first aid training.
Yes.
It would be great for us who aren't maybe versed in what it is and the basic value that you see it after so many years of professional psychology. What is the first aid course? How valuable could that be?
Well, I do more than therapy now. I do consulting around the world on various issues, crisis and trauma debriefing and things like that. And I'm always looking for ways that the mental health knowledge, that core of information, can be transferred out to people. And so I don't want it to go out in a typically therapeutic or clinical or counseling oriented way. I want it to be out as a psychoeducational or informational way. So thanks to a grant that the County of Fresno received, we were able to get trained, a number of us from within county agencies and a few of us from the community, in mental health first aid training. And that is a certified program that actually came out of Australia, and it's going all over the world, and it tries, one of its main things is it wants to educate. The second main thing it wants to do is to destigmatize mental illness within the community. So as a person who's saying, how can I enrich the church experience around mental illness, it's a perfect thing. And it works on helping us understand through a 12-hour course a person about depression, anxiety, substance use disorder, psychoses, eating disorders, on what they are, and makes people feel comfortable. I mean, if I was a general consumer, when I finished the section on psychosis, I felt so much freedom to go and talk to, minister to, listen to a person with a psychotic process that I didn't before, even with all my experience.
What's interesting about that is that that was just hosted right here in the Valley,
Yes.
and we want you to be aware, viewers, that we will be trying to help you appreciate the possibility of participating in the next one, because I am sure that the initial one had some great success, but maybe not as many participated as in the second round, when people hear of it again and know what they missed. Your church was able to host.
We haven't hosted yet, but there's going to be a training, not a training for trainers, but a training for faith leaders, clergy, and it'll be hosted at my church in February, and we don't have the exact date set yet, but we will be hosting another training for folks who want to get comfortable just being able to have a relationship with someone who has an illness that causes them to somehow be different. Give people a chance to work at those relationships. I think that's the real key there.
Kurt, I'm wondering if in your experience, which now has had different even venues where you've been able to minister to different people, if there's a spiritual support that you've been able to see that actually helps someone get access to what would be professional help, or to stay with something that they were receiving, or to benefit more fully from what it is that you know they were able to receive perhaps elsewhere.
Well, I think the idea of compassion, which you were discussing in the first part of the program, is one of the key aspects, I think, of hopefully any spirituality.
Right.
And I think that the idea that the people that come to me and are feeling comfortable to be able to disclose if they're having mental health problems and then not being stigmatized helps me to encourage them to go back to the portions that I can't address. And part of being clergy, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I am not trained to do that. So the idea is to be supportive and to have them work through. And if they have questions about the motivation, a lot of times my clients will say, what's the motivation of going? And then we'll be able to talk about that. But having a relationship where I would be able to pass it on to the professional is very important.
And one of the things that I've been able to do as clergy is to help some of my people understand that science and religion are not separate things, that God is in the midst of the science as well, that the two answer different questions. So if one of the ways that God's healing touch is in our lives is through the medical community, then why would we not use that? And so to be able to help people understand that they are not without faith if they need to have medical treatment, and to walk them through what that means. It's one of those privileges I get to have as clergy.
We take a lot of referrals out of churches from pastors directly, and we try and elicit the permission from the person getting treatment to stay in communication with the pastor. Because we think there's a greater combination of good and treatment and wholeness that can come out of when there is a community with the person. So we try not to treat somebody in isolation if at all possible.
On the brochure about the mental health first aid course, it had something very, very, very significant on the cover. You are more likely to encounter a person in an emotional or mental crisis than someone having a heart attack. Mental disorders are more common than heart disease and cancer combined. Now, what I wonder if the panel could help us appreciate, we would be so attentive, I think, to a heart attack or to a cancer when someone shares. Why is it or how is it that we may be either oblivious or just not attentive to what is obviously on this brochure more common? What's going on there?
Sometimes some of the symptoms are hidden. You know,
Right.
I mean, it's easy to look like you're having a sad day, and it's easy to say, you know, how you doing? Fine. You know, when you may be more depressed than anything, it's easy to cover over. Once again, it gets at the stigma. The more stigmatic, or you know, the more stigma put on something, the more it's hidden. It's
Right.
not necessarily bad. It's scary, but it's not crazy to have a heart attack in public. It's crazy to have a crazy experience in public.
And one of the things that my congregation has been working really hard to do is to make our space a safe space for people to share what's truly going on in their lives. I'm as likely to have a member of my congregation share a need for prayer for a mental health issue as I am for somebody to be asking for prayers for an issue of physical health. But it's taken a while, but it's gotten to that place where it is something that people will share with one another within the context of our sacred space.
Kurt, being that you are at the Buddhist temple, can you help us appreciate if there's a significant difference, a nuance in what may happen in a Catholic church, an evangelical community, a Protestant church, and at the Betsuan temple?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is that when it comes to a physical ailment, people say, oh, go to the doctor, someone else can take care of that. Or it's easy to say, well, I can break my arm. But for the members of our temple, when we talk about mental illness, is one of the main teachings we have is that everyone is interconnected and no one is separate from everyone else. And so when it comes to dealing with someone's mental illness, then it's very hard for our Sangha member, our temple member, to interact. Like, what am I supposed to do? Or it might be scarier to them to deal with somebody that's depressed because that could happen to me. So, you know, I try to use that as a tool, is that there is no separation of us and other people in the community. We are the community.
And you have found that consistently in your own community, that it almost is that you two are resonating equally.
And it goes back to the compassion.
Yes.
Really and truly, in the end, it goes back to caring more about the people around us than the ideas that are prevalent in the society as a whole. Those people matter. I mean, it's the reason I'm here today. Those people matter.
Yeah.
Now, Brent, personally and professionally, you obviously represent a commitment in this ministry.
Yeah.
Does evangelical faith, by and large, find itself on board, not just theologically, but practically, or is that something that, like I'd say, the Catholic Church, not necessarily leading the charge ourselves?
Yeah.
Because it's a large, powerful community in this country, the evangelical church.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Well, I think you would find them all over the landscape. You know, I think there are some segments of evangelicalism that are very much advocates. I know there are two major groups of professional mental health people, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, of over 50,000 strong, that are just in the United States alone, that come together to share treatment issues and advocate for the mentally ill. And also there is a very strong component in Fresno right at the moment that reflects kind of a current thing that's called Celebrate Recovery. It's in many churches, and they focus on hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And so there's a lot of maybe addiction stuff there too, but people are coming into the church that never would have come before because they can be open about what is going on. And what I found at our church, where I attend, is that those people, they don't just stay right there with that, compartment. They get involved in the whole life of the church, and so it's very much of a health promoting walk with them.
When you mentioned Celebrate Recovery, I know where they're doing it at Northwest, only because one of my good friends is there every Thursday night, because she gets so much excitement at seeing healing happening at a church.
Yes.
And she would wish that every church, Jim, should have CR. It's so good. and it's wonderful to have you say, as a professional, oh, it's good. It's a wonderful experience. So we would wish that all churches would be temples, synagogues, and mosques would be looking at this. We do have one more reminder of where you could go for more information on this topic. If you would go to Mental Health America of the Central Valley, there's a website and there's a phone number. And we would hope you would do this, because they are helping make this program happen today, and they are also there to be able to tell you so much more about what mental health services there could be. We want to remind you that this program is going to be on YouTube, and you could look where it's posted there on YouTube and catch this and tell your friends and see it again and again for the weeks that we'll be posting it. Also, at knxt.wordpress.com, if you'd like to join our conversation about this issue, please do. It's there for you to blog and to join our panelists about this topic. I'm going to give them all 10 seconds of final thought before we say goodbye for this program. Natalie, a final short thought.
In the end, it is relationship and the compassion we have for one another that makes a difference in where we end up in this life.
Brent.
It goes both ways. People need to help each other, because we never know when we're going to need the help ourselves.
Kurt.
Isolation is a horrible thing. If we reach out and give genuine compassion to anyone, it will help them.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful panel today. We will be back, believe it or not, next week with another panel, and we'll go deeper into the subject. Stay tuned for another program on Channel 49. God bless.